Right now, your body is quietly running a 2 million-year-old software update. You just don't notice it until you take a long bath. Look at your fingertips after 20 minutes in warm water. The skin is pruned, wrinkled, folded into little canyons that weren't there before. And almost everyone thinks they know why. Water soaks into the skin and makes it swell, right? That's the answer your science teacher probably gave you. It feels obvious. It feels correct. It is also almost certainly wrong. The truth is stranger, and it's happening to your hands on purpose. Not what wrinkling looks like, but what your body is actually trying to do. Here's the better question. The one your fingers are quietly answering every time you step out of the shower. Why would evolution build a hand that reshapes itself the moment it gets wet? Because that's exactly what's happening. Your fingers are not passively soaking up water like a sponge. If they were, every other patch of soft skin on your body would prune too. Your stomach, your forearms, your cheeks. They don't. Only your fingertips and the soles of your feet do this trick. That alone should make you suspicious. Plain old water damage doesn't choose its targets. So scientists looked closer, and what they found is genuinely weird. When your fingers wrinkle in the bath, your nervous system is doing it for you. The signal travels down a branch of your autonomic nervous system, the same system that runs your heartbeat and your goosebumps. Your brain quietly tells the tiny blood vessels just under your fingertip skin to constrict. When those vessels shrink, the soft tissue above them collapses inward, and the skin on top, which is firmly anchored to deeper layers, has nowhere to go but up, folding into those familiar little ridges. In other words, your wrinkles aren't swelling. They're the opposite of swelling. They're a controlled, deliberate collapse, ordered from inside. We know this because of one striking observation. People with certain nerve injuries in their fingers stop wrinkling in water entirely. If wrinkling were just water seeping into dead skin, a damaged nerve shouldn't matter. Skin is skin. Water is water. But the nerves do matter. Cut the signal and the wrinkles disappear, which means your brain is choosing to do this. And once you know that, the obvious next question is the fun one. Why? Here's the strange part. Evolution doesn't bother building a reflex unless that reflex earns its keep. So researchers started testing what wrinkled fingers can actually do. They handed people wet objects, marbles, beads, slippery little things, and timed how fast they could move them around. Dry fingers versus dry objects about the same. Wet fingers versus wet objects, the wrinkled ones won. Pruned fingertips appear to grip wet things better, faster, more confidently. Think about that for a second. The wrinkles aren't damage, they're tread. Imagine the bottom of a rain tire. Those grooves don't make the tire bigger or softer. They give water somewhere to escape so the rubber can press cleanly against the road. Your wet fingertips do the same thing. The little channels between the ridges let water squeeze out from under your skin, so the soft pads of your fingers can make real contact with whatever you're holding. It's a built-in wet weather grip pattern, and your body deploys it automatically the moment it detects you've been soaked for a few minutes. This sounds fake, but think about how useful that would have been for your ancestors. Long before plumbing, your great-great-great-grandparents were spending real time in water, wading through rivers to cross them, reaching into streams for fish, foraging shellfish from tide pools, climbing wet rocks after a rainstorm. Slippery fingers were not a minor inconvenience. They were the difference between catching dinner and watching it swim away, between climbing safely and falling. A nervous system that quietly reshaped your hands the moment they got wet would have been a quiet little superpower. And the same logic explains your feet. Your soles wrinkle for exactly the same reason. Better traction on wet ground. Mud, riverbeds, rain-soaked stone. So the next time you step out of the bath and glance at your toes, you're not looking at waterlogged skin. You're looking at an ancient grip system clicking on right when it's needed. Now, here's where the story gets honest. Scientists are still arguing about how big this effect really is. Some studies show a clear advantage for wrinkled fingers on wet objects. Other studies have tried to repeat the experiment and found a smaller effect or none at all. That's how science is supposed to work. Claims get tested, retested, and refined. Right now, the leading idea is that wrinkling is an active, brain-controlled response with a likely grip-related purpose. But the size of the real-world benefit is still being measured. What is not in doubt is the mechanism. Your nerves trigger it. Your blood vessels execute it. Your skin folds because your body decided it should. Here's the part that quietly delighted researchers. The wrinkle pattern on your fingertips isn't random. The channels run in fairly consistent directions, designed almost like the drainage lines on a tire. And when scientists looked at how water actually escapes from under a pruned fingertip, the pattern matched what an engineer would design on purpose. Your body, without asking you, is doing fluid dynamics. There's even more clever architecture under the hood. The pattern of channels seems tuned to drain water outward toward the edges of your fingertip, so when you press down on something wet, the liquid has an exit route, sideways and away. Without those channels, water gets trapped between your skin and the object. A trapped layer of water is exactly what makes things feel slippery. In a way, your fingertips solve the same problem a windshield wiper solves. Move the water out of the way so contact can happen. Except your hand is doing it passively, just by existing in the right shape. Quick comment break. I'm genuinely curious about this one. If wrinkly fingers really are wet weather grip, why do you think your palms don't prune nearly as much as your fingertips? Drop your best guess in the comments. I'll read them. Now back to the weirdness, because there's one more twist. Your fingers don't wrinkle instantly. It usually takes about 5 minutes of soaking before the ridges really show up, and there's a reason that delay makes sense. Evolution didn't want your hands reshaping themselves every time you washed a piece of fruit. A quick splash isn't a wet environment, it's just a splash. But 5 solid minutes in water? That's a river, a rainstorm, a tide pool. That's a situation where your hands really do need traction. So your nervous system waits, it checks, and only then does it flip the switch. It's a built-in timer, tuned by millions of years of trial and error, and you've never had to think about it once. Here's something else that's wild. The same wrinkles also seem to flatten back out at almost exactly the right speed. A few minutes after you dry off, your fingertips smooth out again. The blood vessels relax. The skin lifts back into its normal shape. Your hand goes from grippy wet mode to precise dry mode without you noticing the switch. You just feel like your fingers again. And that handoff matters more than it sounds. Dry fingertips are better at fine, delicate touch. Feeling the texture of fabric, picking up a single grain of salt. Wet, pruned fingertips are better at holding on. 2 modes, 1 hand. Think about how rare that is in nature. Most tools are good at one job and bad at the others. A wrench isn't also a paintbrush, but your fingertip pulls off a quiet shape shift twice every time you take a long shower. And it does it without ever asking your conscious mind for permission. You are not the manager of this process, you are the user. You are, quite literally, walking around with all-terrain skin, which, when you think about it, reframes the whole thing. Pruny fingers aren't a sign your body is falling apart in the tub. They're a sign your body is paying attention. A long soak triggers a quiet little decision. Conditions have changed. Reshape the hands. Improve the grip. You step out of the water, and within minutes, the order is reversed. Smooth fingers return. Fine touch comes back online. You don't feel any of it. You don't choose any of it. It just happens. A tiny ancient piece of body software, still running on hardware that hasn't been in a tide pool for generations. There's something a little tender about that. Your hands are still preparing for a world your daily life rarely demands of them anymore. They don't know you're in a bathtub. They think, every single time, that you might be about to climb a wet rock. So, the next time you slide your hand out of the bath and notice those familiar little ridges on your fingertips, you'll know what you're really looking at. Not damage, not waterlogged skin. You're looking at your nervous system quietly reaching back across millions of years and giving you the grip of an ancestor who needed it. Your body is still wearing the rain tires it was issued long before you were born. If your fingers just got a little more interesting to you, hit that like button. It genuinely helps tiny weird science channels like this one. Subscribe to Bodyquirk so you don't miss the next quirk hiding in your own body. And in the comments, tell me, what's the strangest thing your body does that you've always wondered about but never looked up? I'm building a list, and the best ones become future videos. Next time we're looking at something even sneakier. Why you sometimes feel like you're falling right as you're drifting off to sleep, and what your brain is actually doing in that split second. Your body has more secrets than you think. and almost all of them are running quietly right now.